As a party stands outside a wooden door, Morlock the mage asks Saitou if he can do it, to which he answers that he can, and picks open the door to see another one after it. Saitou gets to work on the second one as well, but realizes that it's sealed by magic as well, so he times it with Morlock, and they both successfully open the door, seeing a treasure chest in the room. When Saitou opens it, a large tongue lashes out to him, but Raelza cuts it with her sword. He notices that her visor is loose and offers to fix it since it might hinder her while fighting, so she shyly takes it off. As he's working, she learns about his past life and says he's amazing. When they get to the surface, he observes Morlock chanting an incantation and asks if he's strong, to which Raelza says he's a level 80 mage and is very powerful but has a bad case of forgetting things. Once when they were clearing a dungeon, he forgot where he was supposed to teleport himself and accidentally fused himself into a golem when he remembered. Another time when they were being attacked by undeads, he forgot he was alive and joined their army. But once everyone in the party had died except him, so even though he was out of mana, they brought their bodies back to the surface, sold all his equipment, and went to the church to revive them. As they're walking, Morlock's back pain returns, so Lafa fixes it for him but always charges money for her services. Seeing the heavy coin pouch she's carrying, Saitou offers to make her a bag and crafts one that won't hinder her wing, and refused to take any charges for his service. Once, when he was measuring parts of Raelza's armor with an inch tape, Lafa asked what millimeters and centimeters mean, so he answered that they were units of measurement from his world, and asks what theirs is, hearing which Morlock strides up and tells them that the founder of this kingdom, Madaraka, was a man with a very long schlong and naturally impregnated a lot of women, creating about 300 babies, after which the kingdom adapted his name and his schlong's size as the official unit of measurement. Once, when he was working an abacus with Melvina, the blacksmith's daughter, a heavily armored woman entered, asking for herbs, but he instantly recognized her as Raelza, making her run away in embarrassment, as Lafa comments that she could have just gone with him. Once, when Saitou had fallen into an anti-magic trap and was stuck there alone, he miserably wondered if the party members would just leave him behind because of being a burden, and wonders if nothing's changed from his miserable past life, but is proven wrong when Raelza, Lafa, and Morlock entered the cave, looking for him and supported him since his leg was broken, saying he's irreplaceable. As they're fighting slime dragons, Raelza runs away, heavily gasping as Morlock explains that she can't handle slimy things, so Saitou tries to take her place and barrages it with attacks, while Lafa and Morlock provide backup, so they are eventually able to defeat it before Saitou goes to cook its meat. The others tell him to not do so since it tastes really disgusting, and Raelza starts blanching, but he says there's another way to do it and starts grilling it, saying there's a bad tasting layer between the meat which they are going to remove by this process. Once he's done, he seasons and skewers the meat, handing it to them, so Morlock and Lafa reluctantly take a bite but instantly love the flavor. Seeing this and Saitou's expression toward her, Raelza also takes a bite and starts hungrily gobbling it up, immensely enjoying the taste. Once he was picking treasure chests, he came across one with a wiring mechanism and tentatively started cutting them one by one before one drops a vat of liquid on Raelza that melts her arm, leaving only her underclothes, which she blushingly hides from Saitou as he looks at her shyly. As two female adventurers are clearing dungeons, one of them gets injured by some goblins, so her friend cups her face in her hands and heals it, inwardly saying that every time she heals her, she feels that she's slowly becoming hers. She starts licking the wound on her hand, saying it helps in treating it, and then moves to under her arm as the two start sensuously moaning. A goblin appreciatively watches from afar. As they're sitting around a fire, Morlock's back pain returns, so he asks Lafa to fix it, but she refuses to unless he hands over a gold coin, so Saitou gives her one, and when the two are gone, asks Raelza why Lafa is after money so much, since they always divide the rewards they receive from dungeons, so she takes him to a clearing and says the race Lafas from used to once live on the moon, but were prideful and banished to the earth, where they must offer a gold coin every full moon or their size will shrink every time. Once, when Saitou picks a chest, he and Raelza, the two people who can't use magic, are transported to a chamber where he apologizes and says he'll try his best to not drag her down, which she shyly acknowledges. They suddenly run into an iron golem, so she tells him to run if she's unable to make it, and starts fighting but slowly gets worn down because of its superior size, so Saitou latches himself onto its head and pours the metal melting acid on it, but it grabs him and crushes his torso before vaporizing into the air. Raelza desperately tries to wake him before remembering the potion Morlock had told her about, so she takes a swig and gives it to him through the mouth. Later, as Saitou blearily wakes up, Lafa says Railza saved him through a valuable potion and starts teasing her after he gratefully apologizes. At the back of Melvina's shop there's a matchmaker, as an adventurer looks for a 20-year-old female warrior to adventure alongside him, but the woman says he can't set the bar so high since he's 40, to which he sadly replies that he was a shut-in until he was 30, which is why his level is low compared to others. Saitou watches in awe from the window and says he didn't know there were matchmaking services in this world as well, so Lafa, who's with him, explains that since magic can be used by everyone, the number of female adventurers also started rising a lot, coupled with the gradually decreasing income, which is why these have almost become necessary. Once the adventurer leaves, Morlock enters the matchmaker's room with a bouquet and asks her to marry him, but she declines before Railza arrives from behind a curtain and takes him away. Once, in a dungeon, the party suddenly ran into an alluring succubus who places Saitou in a trance, making him slowly walk towards her in wonder. Lafa gets ready to dispel the magic, but Railza angrily reaches the succubus before her and goes berserk mode with her large sword. When the succubus leaves Saitou, he's still enchanted and starts walking towards Railza, slowly getting closer to her body, but Lafa lifts the enchantment in time and teases if she should have waited a little longer before they see Morlock trying to marry the succubus without even being possessed and quietly leave. In a desert, a ninja stealthily jumps behind an attractive 400-year-old itch and tries to attack her, but steps in her shadow, which is a portal to and teleports him to hell. Later, he returns from the underworld with 2 demonic creatures under his control, and uses them to disable the witch's magic and immobilizing her movements before getting close to her and taking off his mask to kiss her, as the demons realize in shock that he had fallen in love with the witch. In a dungeon, Saitou's wire cutter accidentally breaks, sending him spiraling into sadness, but Morlock calms him down and says there's a dwarf who will be able to fix it, but is complicated to get to because of him having placed 108 locks on his door that they must pick to reach him, but Saitou easily opens all of them and gets his wire cutters fixed before wondering if he should get a gun built for himself, but decides not to since it's too dangerous a weapon. Half a year has passed since he came into this world, so Saitou tells Melvina how he got hit by a truck after losing his job and found himself in bed with Railza, who was about to kill him but stopped. Later, the party decides to visit the Iron Golem's chamber once again for Saitou, even though it means that they might risk going in the red and discover a new expansion which gets named Saitou's Tunnel. As hundreds of adventurers arrive to explore and find rewards in this new tunnel, Saitou remarks that he can't let them find the robot vacuum. As they're standing in front of the dungeon, Lafa asks how it's fair that everyone gets a go at it even though they were the ones who discovered it, but Morlock answers that's just how the law works, and at least they have free access to it for 10 years before a voice addresses Saitou, and a boy and girl walk up to him and introduce themselves as Kynes, the hero, and Lich, the mage of the kingdom, who will be the one that completely explores the dungeon. As they leave, a boy hurriedly apologizes their behavior and introduces himself as Montail Pipe before holding out his hand, but as Saitou's about to shake it, an urgent voice tells him not to, as an elven girl walks up and says all the people he shook hands with are unable to move before the boy becomes flustered and runs away. At night, as the royal mage and a knight are sitting near a campfire, a ninja suddenly stabs through the mage and slashes the knight into pieces before the knight turns to the demon king. Meanwhile, as Saitou's party is slowly getting overwhelmed by a large monster, a girl slashes through it and introduces herself and her friend as Liliza and Gibber. They decide to share the rewards, so Saitou swiftly picks through the chest, seeing which Gibber instantly falls for him, and Liliza explains that he swings both ways. As Railza is fighting a monster, she remarks that they can easily kill it, but the elven warrior abruptly slashes through it and says she'll take the entire treasure, over which she and Railza start arguing before proposing a mutually accepted duel. They start fighting and the girl slashes through Railza's joints because of her swiftness, so Railza dons her light armor that Saitou created, but the threads on it suddenly pop off, revealing her breasts, which she embarrassingly tries to hide. Later, as the girl is standing with her friend who tells her to not die because she can't resurrect people, and starts crying before the two embrace each other, but Saitou enters at an awkward moment asking if they'd like some treasure. Later, Saitou spots the robot vacuum and runs after it, coming to a chamber filled with artifacts from Saitou's past world before a sudden light flashes, blinding him. A ninja jumps forward and addresses the source of the light as Primus, telling her to keep the light low, but Railza blocks his attack on Saitou, and Lafa starts fighting Primus as the two teams come to a standstill before a burly knight defeats the ninja and approaches Morlock, introducing himself as Givengel and saying he's been looking for him for 20 years, addressing him as Master. Givengel addresses Morlock as Master, but Morlock doesn't recognize him, so he tries to remind him that he was a great mage who once went in the search of a forbidden spell, but never returned, which is why he's been looking for him for so long. The others ask Morlock what he's saying, so he worriedly admits that he doesn't really remember anything other than his name and that he can use magic, but Givengel says Morlock was just a name he used while flirting with women and that his real name is Belgan. Suddenly, a dagger catches him in the face, so Raelza turns around and Saitou takes her shield as they formulate a plan and say they can swiftly defeat the ninja, but are surprised when the ninja and his fairy Primas walk out with two demonic creatures that get ready to kill them. As the ninja is walking with the two demons in a barren land, they split up to search for the house since he can't control his feelings, and he comes to a house which he nervously enters and sees an old woman tiredly lying on a mat. He asks if she's alive, but suddenly notices a similarity and realizes she's Revelia the witch before a dark-winged fairy tells him to not look and says she'll soon die of old age, before explaining that she charmed a demon long ago and made him cast an anti-aging spell on her, but it came with an innate curse which stated that it would cast upon her all the years of aging she had prevented if she ever fell in love, and since she fell in love with him that day, her time has now come. Hearing this, he starts crying and asks if there's any way to save her, to which she answers that the only way is through the artifacts of time lying in the Great Labyrinth. Now, as Saitou's party is fighting against the ninja and his band, they slowly start getting overwhelmed even with the now conscious dwarf's help. A great demon suddenly grabs Saitou's hand and crushes it before his body vanishes as Jibber and Liliza arrive, carrying him in his arms, after which the elf, Flanrel, and her friend, Mompy, Kynes, and Lich also come to their aid. Enraged by the sudden help, the ninja slowly starts getting defeated and takes a big blow, defending the demons before Primas tells him to tear off her wings to summon a demon god, remembering how Revelia had cared for her and saved her from the degenerate adventurers that tried to capture her and the day she told her about the boy. But the ninja despairingly says he can't do it, and Primas starts crying before using a telekinesis spell to cut off her wings herself as she starts chanting the spell to summon the demon god. The ninja and his party transform into a demon god whose eyes land on Flamel, so it cuts away her ear, but her friend catches it and uses her healing magic to reattach it. They all rigorously try to attack it but aren't able to land a major blow, so Morlock uses his 7 lighting spell memorized by Saitou and unleashes it on the god, but it still stays unaffected and stops a moment before starting to fire multiple laser beams simultaneously. Because of the laser beams, none of the close-range fighters can get through and attack it head-on, so the mages start casting barriers, but warn the others that they can't hold out for long if they run out of mana. Seeing that there's no other way, Saitou tells Morlock that it's time to use that spell, the time-stopping one. Morlock asks in surprise how he knows of that, to which Saitou reminds him of the time when he had picked the lock on a book, but Morlock had told him that it only contained a mushroom, but after he'd left, Saitou had found out that it had a fake base and opened it to find some pages with spells containing how to transcend time and space, and asks Morlock if he was the one who summoned him to this world. Some time ago, the great magician, Chrome, had a daughter he loved very much, as his daughter makes him a necklace of his name. She asks him to wear it, but he says he has to go study to become the best mage of the kingdom, after which they'll live an even better life, to which she cheerily agrees. At night, as her mother worriedly looks at her fever, she wonders what they're going to do before Chrome arrives, but says he only came to get a book since tomorrow they'll officially give him the title of the strongest mage in the kingdom, and leaves, saying he'll come as soon as possible. The next day, he happily enters the house, saying that he was given the title, but finds his wife bleakly standing over his daughter's cot. As he slowly approaches, she tells him that her fever suddenly shot up in the middle of the night. She tried to go to the doctors, but none of them were there. Devastated, Chrome says they can go to the church and use all the gold they have, but she points to the table where only 3 gold coins are lying, saying they don't have enough. She'd later left him, and as Chrome was wildly stumbling through the house in his anger and grief, he'd found a book on spells that can transcend time and space. He'd gone to the labyrinth and met a being who he'd fought to get the power to turn back time, but had lost, so the being had removed his memories, making him forget the grief. Now, Saitou tells him to not worry about it even if he did, and starts telling him the spell he'd memorized. Once he's done, Morlock chants the spell and stops time for a 100 counts, but forgets what he's supposed to do. As Morlock successfully stops time, the count starts, but he looks around in confusion, wondering what he's supposed to do. He looks around at the immobile faces of everyone around him and at the demon god before walking towards Saitou's still form, asking what he should do. As he holds out his hand, he notices something written on it and remembers that Saitou had written the objective with the quill from another world. He reads the commands and starts tearing up, saying that he doesn't deserve them all before angrily walking towards the demon god. He explains that he has a better grip on fire explosion spells and they are much more powerful when delivered from up close before jumping at one of its eyes and activating his spell as he comes in contact with its skin. The memory of the ninja suddenly starts going through his mind and he realizes that all he's doing is for love and atonement and starts hesitating. He wonders what he should do with the limited time he has and looks back at his friends before apologizing and unleashing the spell just as time resumes. A huge explosion rocks the chamber as the others start wondering what's happening and if Morlock was successful. As the smoke clears, they see his hand lying on the ground in horror, but he steps up and says it's okay and he handled it. He asks Lafa if she can help, so she eagerly steps up and tells Railza to give her the hand, but he holds out Prima's, telling her to heal her wings. Looking at the others' reactions, he explains that he saw their memories when delivering the final blow, and transferred half the attacking mana to his other hand, enough to injure but not kill. Hearing this, Railza tearfully hugs him and he goes to Flanrel's friend, Ninia, and asks her to heal him so she and Mompy fix it together. Meanwhile, Primas refuses Lafa, saying she won't get pity from someone fraternizing with the humans, but Lafa asks her if she wasn't just ready to give her life up for the ninja. The ninja asks Railza to just send the demons back to hell since they were only following him of their own free will before the royal mage and the demon king approach, and order them to hand them over since they ambushed them, and reveals his true identity before recognizing one of the demons as his nephew. As they understand the situation, the royal mage says they can bring the witch's life back by an acquaintance he knows, although it'll take the sacrifice of someone related to her, so the ninja volunteers, saying he'll happily die for the person he loves, to which everyone agrees before he leaves with the royal mage and demon king. When they're gone, Primas asks Saitou if he found what he was looking for, to which he answers that he didn't before they notice a group of adventurers entering the chamber, so Saitou decides to hurry up and get what he wants and runs off to the large piles with the others in tow behind him. Meanwhile, the king wearily enters the witch's cabin, remarking how they're summoning a king to chant a spell but can't say no since both the minister and demon king requested it. He meets the ninja, who asks if he can really lift the curse and restore her youth, to which the king answers that he can and takes out a large blood-red sword, saying it has the ability to take the whole life of the enemy, and says it'll cost his whole life to save the witch. He asks if he'll be able to do it, to which the ninja looks down and answers that he spent most of his life killing people he never knew and it was a way of living for him, but met friends and fell in love, making him realize of his mistakes. He takes off his mask and says he doesn't deserve to life and that he wants to use his sinful life to save someone else. The king says he'll grant this wish and raises the sword high before bringing it down over the ninja's body. The witch, now de-aged, wakes up and slowly walks out of her house, where she sees a man without arm and leg standing in front of her. The king had said he'd use half his life and half of the witch's and cut off half his body. She asks who he is, saying she's been asleep a long time and doesn't recognize him, so he slowly smiles and starts walking away, but Primas tells him to go back since she also sacrificed half her life, but he refuses until he sees two men trying to touch her, so he rushes towards them with his stick and makes them run away, after which the witch smiles and asks him to come in, resulting in the fact that the love between the witch and the ninja will surely bloom again. As Saitou and the others walk out of the cave, he thanks them and bids them all goodbye. Later, as he and the others are having dinner, Morlock says he can send Saitou back to his world, hearing which Railza angrily walks away. Saitou meets with her and says he doesn't want to go back to the world before she says she needs him more than anyone else, hearing which he smiles and says he'll have to stay with the person who needs him as Morlock and Lafa arrive and say that even if they're able to successfully transport him back, he'll find himself in front of the truck that was about to kill him, meaning he'd die. Later, he heads for the labyrinths with Railza and Lafa, leaving Morlock behind since he accidentally got poisoned, and once they get out 4 days later, they find his room empty as the inn owner tells them that the person who lived here passed away 3 days ago. As a wolf runs after a dragon, he says that he's a demon wolf from hell, a servant to his demon noble master and one who hunts beasts for him. He's slain many beasts and monsters, but one day, he met a beautiful human wolf who'd wandered here from the human realm. The innkeeper explains that he brought him a meal but saw that he wasn't breathing, so Railza quickly asks if he took him to the church, but he answers that corpse storing takes a lot of money and isn't their responsibility, which is why they thought it'd be safe in the barn and kept him there, but a wild dog one day ate a major part off of him, after which they couldn't waste time waiting for them any longer and buried him. As they look at his grave, Railza says that revival only works if the body's condition is fine, and that she's never heard of a revival when the body has already been buried, but Saitou says that means the failure rate isn't guaranteed and says they should do whatever they can to bring him back, to which Lafa enthusiastically agrees, so they head off to look for tools. He went to see her on the days when he was free from the hunts and they are both living a happy life. until his master told him what his next target was. They both decided to run away to the human realm, but were cornered by a demon who heavily injured her before he was successfully able to kill it, but it was too late at that point. As she slowly drew her last breaths, a small pup climbed out from below her. Lafa heads toward Morlock's grave with tools but sees a hole there and wonders if they dug it open without her. As Saitou and Railsa hurry over, saying they took too much time. They're hit by a powerful fireball explosion and see an undead walking towards them, so she tries to fight it but can't hurt it. Ad realizes that Morlock's already turned into an undead before the skeleton gets blasted away as a robed figure walks towards them. They happily approach it, realizing he wasn't dead but see a skeleton talking to them. Later, he says a delayed reincarnation spell was put over him, probably by his past self, but he can't transform back because he lost his thing, so they begin trying to find the dog and walk toward where it was last sighted before Morlock stops Saitou in private and says he's not sure if he'll be able to live through this or not and asks him to take the hand of his daughter, Railsa. Saitou says that he should consider the feelings of Railsa as well, to which Morlock replies that she's liked him for a long time. Lafa and him have noticed that for a long time. He says that he has no memories of ever having a family, which is why ever since he met her when she was 10, he's taken care of her like his own daughter, so Saitou takes a deep breath and agrees, asking him to please let him take Railsa's hand. Overjoyed, Morlock tells him to say that to her as well, to which he tells him to quickly get normal before a dog viciously pounces on and bites Morlock, after which it bares its fangs at him. As the others are wondering what they're doing, they worry about what would happen if they got attacked by undead, so Lafa and Railsa go to check on them, leaving Givangel, who's with them, to search for the dog. She nears where they were and sees both of them lying on the ground and noticing the dog as she realizes what's happened and rushes toward it, enraged for hurting the two most important people to her. As it bites her armor, she gets ready to kill it, but it suddenly breathes a huge spout of flame and incinerates her left arm, but she refuses to stop and slashes at its neck as Saitou wakes up completely healed by Lafa. She steps forward to finish it off, but a white pup steps in front of the dog and starts barking, so it gains consciousness from its rage for a second and asks her to spare the pup regardless of whatever she chooses to do to him, which she agrees to and moves forward to kill it before two vines grab hold of it as a greater demon starts pulling it inside hell with it to apparently take revenge for its brother. It starts enchanting a spell to kill them, but Lafa absorbs it as a big blow and gives Railsa the chance as she rushes in and kills the demon, cutting him in half, but as she turns around, the demon's master rises out of its body, using it as a vessel to enter the human realm, and fires a large explosive spell at it, which Lafa takes the brunt of to save Railsa from the damage. As Railsa faces off against it, she tells Saitou to take the others and run, which he reluctantly agrees to. She starts fighting the demon, but it binds her before long to take her to the demon realm with him, but Saitou throws holy water at it and uses his web cutters to free her before saving her from a spell and turning into ice. As Railsa tiredly tries blocking the demon to protect him, Morlock, back to normal, to whom the dog had willingly given his mana in exchange for looking after his son, angrily approaches the demon and uses the 8-pointed flame sword to incinerate it before cheerily approaching the afraid Saitou, Lafa, and Railsa. As Morlock approaches the others, they suddenly notice that he's grown a tail and dog ears before he tells them that the dog willingly gave his magical power back in return for looking after his son and says it's his turn to save him now. Meanwhile, Givangel keeps getting surrounded by an army of undead, so he chants a large-scale spell and explodes the entire area around him, but as he wearily emerges from the sword, more of the undead start surrounding him before Flanrel and Ninia suddenly come to his aid and start fighting the undead with him. Lafa asks what'll happen to him as Morlock says that at that time, his desire to save his child was so strong that it willingly gave up its life for him. As parents, he can relate to that and has decided to break the curse he's under and bring him back to parent his pup. Suddenly, an ice spear lodges into his chest as he flies away with it, and the demon rises up from the crater it was in, saying he won't forgive him, as Railsa wonders just how strong it is to be alive after getting hit by an 8-tier spell. Morlock slowly dissipates the spear as the others ask how it didn't hurt him. He says that the magical energy combined from his and the dog's is making his power rise, and transforms back to his younger spell as the others wonder what's happening. As the demon rushes towards him, he acknowledges that it's an upper tier, probably as strong as the Demon Lord, but he's strong as well right now, and summons the golem he got fused with back then to attack it. But the demon easily destroys it and keeps coming before Morlock uses its fists to land continuous hard blows on him in succession. As the demon slowly gets up, it reveals its full form, but Morlock immobilizes it in midair, saying it underestimates humans too much before starting to chant a spell. The demon, who realizes what it is, says his family will get caught up in it as well with dread, but Morlock places a barrier and keeps chanting before bringing down an entire meteor upon it. Through the explosion, the demon wearily keeps approaching, and Morlock, who's turned back old, forgets his second spell, but before the others can save him from the attack, Saitou, a handyman always looking for ways to make himself useful, slashes it with Rails' sword. Once it's dead, Railsa throws off her armor and rushes at him in happiness, but as they're getting closer after holding each other, a small bit of the demon tries attacking them before being eaten by the pup. Once that's done, Morlock bids farewell despite their emotional protests, and transfers the power to the dog, who after regaining his life asks them to call on him if they're ever in need of strength. But Railsa carries Morlock's body and tells it to not come near town again and that they won't meet again. As Saitou suddenly wakes up, he sees Railsa sitting beside his bed as she tells him that he was asleep for a whole day, hearing which he starts apologizing, but she tells him to not worry since he had been frozen by ice. Suddenly remembering, he asks about Morlock, so they head outside the room, where she tells him that even after giving away basically all his magic power to the dog, he woke up perfectly fine the next day and has been helping the proprietor around the inn ever since. They both go to the top of the Great Labyrinth, whereas they share a tender moment. She says that she's rougher and more crude than other women, which is why someone like her isn't needed anywhere other than this party, but he defiantly says that's not true, and that more than anyone in the world, more than anything in the world, he needs her the most, before being interrupted by Givangel, who tells Saitou that Morlock accidentally locked himself in a room and asks him to get him out of there. Later, he sits down with Railsa and shows her an automatic contraption he'd made that swiftly takes a knife out for her to use, but remarks that it's a bit rough and starts working on it while she fondly watches. Once he's done, he hands it to her, so she tests it out and sees a hairband pop out of it with the knife, which she warmly wraps around her neck. As they go to fight monsters, they come across a mandragora that looks disturbingly similar to Morlock, who inwardly remarks that they won't be able to kill it efficiently because of that, but Railsa brutally starts hacking at it, making him wonder if she's being even more energetic than usual, before Saitou remarks that this is the perfect chance and starts continuously attacking with his crossbow to test it out, enraging him. A few days later, Railsa takes Morlock to an acupuncturist far from their inn, and one day he notices a vase on his desk, which he transforms into a bath for Lafa, who the next day transforms into an average human size the next day. He later buys her clothes and defeats a bully trying to pick on her as she blushingly looks at him from behind. Later, when Railsa arrives, she reverts back to her normal size, after which Givangel explains that the vase enlarges small things before Morlock unknowingly puts it on his thing and enlarges it. That night, as they're eating, all their friends from before arrive at their inn, asking Saitou for something they need his help with. As he slowly looks at them all, he warmly smiles at Railsa, who smiles back, seeing which he remarks that he feels fulfilled far more than he ever did in his old world.